This is rental car number 45, and today I'm driving something a little bit older. This is the 2016 Jeep Cherokee Limited Edition. I actually drove and reviewed this car about 8 months ago, so I'm kind of excited to do it again because there's probably been 30 cars since that time. I want to see how my opinions have changed. But before we really talk about the nuts and bolts of this car, let's jump on Jeep's website and just get an idea for where this ranks in the Jeep Cherokee universe. So the very cheapest model is the Sport, then you have the Sport Altitude, the Latitude, and then you have the Limited, what we're driving today. And then above that, it's the High Altitude, the Trailhawk, the Overland, and the Trailhawk L Plus at the most expensive model. But today we're driving the Limited, which is about middle of the pack as far as price goes. This one, the MSRP is $32,590 when you factor in all the bells and whistles. And that includes 18-inch painted aluminum wheels, which you see right here. I don't know, kind of boring in my opinion, but I guess they work. And this model came with a 2.4-liter four-cylinder engine. This gets you about 184 horsepower with 22 miles per gallon in the city and 31 on the highway. Now, for some extra money, you can upgrade to the V6, and I think I'd highly recommend doing that. When I was driving this car, there's definitely a huge lag when you hit the accelerator before the car actually kicks in and accelerates for you. Surprisingly, the acceleration was particularly bad when I put the car in sport mode. What you're seeing right now is this little dial by the gear shift where you can change the modes of the car. I kept it in sport for about half the time, and it really wasn't good. The acceleration is pretty disappointing. So I guess what I'm saying in a long-winded way is if you're going to get this car, upgrade to the V6. Fuel-wise, you get a 15.8-gallon tank, and unfortunately, Jeep still has this twist-off cap. Now, most of the auto manufacturers have gotten rid of this twist-off cap. Jeep has not yet, but I really do hope that they remove it sometime in the future. My other big complaint about the fueling is that they've hidden the gas cap button in the lower portion of the door. It's right down here underneath the window controls. It's super hard to reach for. So, I've only driven this car for about 2 days, but whenever I had to fuel up, I would stick my hand down there and kind of mess it around for a little while, and finally I would get the button because it's hidden so much underneath that little armrest. It's really a pain in the butt. Honestly, though, it's a minor thing. After you drive this car for a couple of days, I'm sure you'll get used to it. And really, that's my only major complaint about this car. The rest of it is really, really nice. So let's jump inside and take a look at things. And getting into the Limited is actually pretty easy because it comes with keyless entry. That means as long as you have the key fob somewhere on your person, you can just walk up to the car and press this little black button on the door handle, and the locks will unlock for you without having to take the key fob out of your pocket. So here's the interior. I don't know about you, but I'm a pretty big fan of Jeep interiors. I like how big things are. Everything has a large button or a big dial, and the interior just feels very masculine to me. But that might be because I've been driving a ton of minivans lately. Anyway, here's the key fob for the Jeep Cherokee Limited. I really like it. It's small, it has a really nice weight to it. The buttons feel really nice. They're definitely made out of high quality materials. All in all, Jeep probably makes my favorite key fobs out of any car that I've driven lately. And you do get a push button start. It's located right here to the right of the steering wheel. Everything boots up within 4 or 5 seconds, which is a decent time frame for a car like this. Shifting over to the steering wheel, Jeep makes really nice steering wheels. They're thicker than the average sedan, and the buttons are larger and made out of really nice materials, so interacting with the vehicle while you're driving is really a pleasant experience. Above the steering wheel is the gauge cluster. You get 2 nice-sized gauges on the left and the right, and then a very decent-sized digital display right in the center. I have no problems using this digital display. It's not the brightest that I've interacted with, but it's definitely easy to see in daytime and night. I guess if I'm going to criticize something, it's that some of the writing on the digital display, like you see the word range at the very top, it's kind of small. So at times you do have to strain to see things. There's about 6 menus that you can cycle through, and they all have some interesting information, but it's definitely not the most comprehensive sort of menu system that I've come across. But honestly, for a driver like me, there's plenty of information here. I can't really think of anything that I'd want added. To the left of the steering wheel, you get some nice buttons to interact with the windows and the door locks and the headlights. I'm showing this just because I want to mention that these buttons are really made out of nice material, so they feel really nice in the hand. It definitely doesn't feel like the Jeep Limited is made out of cheap materials, which I think is important if you're going to drive a car like this. It needs to feel good. And those same high quality materials are used at the sunglass holder right up here, along with the interior lights, which are actually pretty bright. I've driven a couple cars lately where they've been tiny little LEDs, but that's not true in the Limited. These actually work at night, which is really pleasant to see. Another fun feature is this little cutout on top of the dash. It's just a small storage area with some pretty good depth. I was able to get my cell phone and a couple other odds and ends in here. I found it to be pretty convenient. It's also in a really nice location. Now, directly below that is your center display. This is a nice sized touchscreen with some pretty decent colors. This uses the Uconnect System, and when I drove this car about 8 months ago, I was really impressed with this whole setup. But now that I've driven a couple dozen more cars, I'd say this is just okay. My major complaints are that some of the main things I like to use, like the heated seats or changing where the vents blow in the air conditioning, they're buried under menu structures that require you to press 2 or 3 times before you can change something. I find that to be too much. Honestly, I just want a button, especially for heated seats, that when I'm cold I can reach down and hit that button and boom, the heated seats activate. I don't want to have to interact with a bunch of menus to get where I want. But besides the menu structure, it's a great display. It's really nice. I don't think you'll have any major complaints. And directly below the touchscreen are the climate controls. I do like the Jeep has installed some really big dials to make it easy to interact with things and some large buttons. What I don't like is that some of the climate controls are hidden within the touchscreen. That means that if you want to change, for example, the way the vents are blowing, whether just the top or the bottom, you have to interact with the touchscreen to make that change. I also don't like that the temperature isn't always visible. You'll see it right now in the upper left-hand and right-hand corner. You have to actually change the temperature to see that, which is kind of annoying. I would much prefer to have a digital display down by the climate controls so I can see exactly what temperature I'm changing the thermostat to. So those changes would make the climate controls perfect, but they're good enough. They actually are pretty nice. Directly below the climate controls, you get this small area with inputs for USB and audio out. There's also a DC outlet right there, and then there's also the terrain selector that I mentioned before. This area is pretty nice, and I did find a nice spot to store my cell phone, which is always a good thing to see. Directly behind that area you get the gear shift, and that's where the electronic parking brake is located. I love the location, it makes it really easy, and I have come to love electronic parking brakes. They really are convenient and a lot easier to use than the standard lever or push button pedal. Shifting all the way over to the right, you actually get a decent sized glove box with this one. It's got a shelf kind of built into it, and it goes pretty far back. A lot of the cars I've been driving lately have tiny glove boxes, so this is really nice to see. Good job, Jeep. And good job on the center armrest. This is a decent size. It's located in a nice place so it's comfortable to rest your elbow on. It's a pretty deep area that you could store quite a bit of things in. And then there's an additional DC power outlet right here and a USB connection, which is always really convenient to have down here. Before we shift to the back seat, I just want to quickly talk about safety technology. You do get a rear view camera, which is nice, but you don't get a forward collision warning, you don't get blindside detection, and you don't get a lane departure warning. Those are all available for additional price, but I would like to see Jeep add these as a standard option on all their cars. They're really things that I like to have. And honestly, they're not that expensive to add, so hopefully Jeep will do that in the future. As far as the back seat goes, this is actually one of the better back seats I've experienced in quite a while. It's a really nice size, so honestly I think 3 normal size adults could actually sit back here, which isn't true for most of the SUVs I've been driving lately. There's also a very big armrest in the center with 2 cup holders. I like that this sits up high so you can actually rest your elbow on it instead of falling all the way down onto the seat. Also, the back seats are adjustable. I had a hard time sort of filming this, but the seats do slide forward just like the front row seats. So if you get down and look underneath, you can see there's a little bar right here. You just pull it up, and then you can slide the seat forward and backwards. You can kind of see that right here. Notice the seat closest to us is much further forward than the seat farther away. All right, so that's the back seat. Let's talk about the storage space in the back, which is actually a very, very nice size. Honestly, I really think there's enough room back here for a third row seat, but Jeep did not put one back here. This is all storage space. Also underneath, if you lift up the floor, you get a really nice storage area with a bunch of compartments that you can use to sort of organize and store things. It's constructed out of really nice materials too. The hinges on this are nice and all the materials feel really solid, which is pretty uncommon for a storage area like this. You also get a nice DC outlet hidden right here on the left-hand side, so you can plug in your toys if they're stored in the back. The back passenger seats also fold down. There's just a little lever that's right by the headrest. You pull up on that and they fall forward very easily. And then you transform the back into a pretty sizable storage area that I think you could use to haul all kinds of things. So that's the back storage area. I want to close things out just by talking about driving this car. Now, I mentioned before that acceleration isn't great because it's a 4-cylinder engine on a kind of a big SUV, and that's true. But the handling, actually driving this, is actually one of the best cars that I've driven in quite a while. The Limited feels really smooth, especially when you go over bumps, and it turns just really nicely. I'm not sure it's because of how thick the tires are or because you're in sort of a truck frame for this car, but I really enjoy driving this one. It felt like I was really in control the whole time I was driving. I guess what I'm saying is I was a fan of this car 8 months ago, and I am still a fan of it. It is a really, really nice SUV. I know I've been kind of critical of some of the smaller details, but overall, this is a great, great car, especially for about $30,000. So after spending 2 more days with the Jeep Cherokee Limited and driving about 150 miles, I'm going to give this one 4 stars. The 2016 Jeep Cherokee Limited is a fantastic SUV. It's just not perfect. If you made a couple of improvements to the climate controls, added a couple more safety features, I think I'd definitely give this one 5 stars. So if you have an opportunity, definitely rent this one or take it out for a test drive. Alright, so that's rental car number 45. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll join me next time when I rent, well, my 46th rental car.